Republican Anthony Desposito represents the Long Island, New York district where he grew up, and is one of nearly 80 new U.S. House members in the 118th Congress. Before getting into politics, he served as a New York City police officer. He told C-SPAN about the role of his parents and faith in shaping his political philosophy.
I think it comes from growing up in a small community. Parents that worked really hard. My mom, came here from Puerto Rico with her parents at the age of 2, with her 7 siblings, settled in Island Park, the same community that I live in now. My dad, born and raised in Rockaway Beach, and then was a boater, loved the water, and met my mom in Island Park. They've lived there for close to 50 years. And it's just a community of hardworking, blue-collar people who care about their pocketbooks, who want people that are going to represent them, that have the same values as they do. A lot of volunteerism, people from the volunteer fire service, people involved in the Kiwanis and the chamber, people that just want their community to be the best that it could be, but want leadership that's going to respect them.
What role did faith play in your childhood and in your life?
I grew up in like I said, a small community of Island Park. It's one of those places where, if you walk down the street and do something wrong, everyone knows within 5 minutes, and that was before Facebook. So it's a small community with our church. I was raised Roman Catholic, went to church every Sunday. I was an altar server. Our church is, like a small beacon in our community. I went to Catholic high school, an all-boys Catholic high school, Chaminade High School in Mineola. So faith has been a part of my life from day one. It's something that, I lean on each and every day, especially now. Faith has always been a part. And I think it's not only my faith. I've had the opportunity to represent a diverse community, both now and prior to being a member of the Hempstead Town Board, a very large group of Orthodox Jews, and I think it's just faith in general. It's respecting other people's faith, their traditions, and I think that makes a well-rounded, well-respected elected official.
How do you lean on your faith every day?
I think it's one of those things where when you're going to say something, you I always take the people say count to 3, I say a Hail Mary. So this way I know I don't say anything terribly wrong. But I think it's just something that, referring back to growing up and the way I was raised, and again, going to Mass and the lessons learned, going to Catholic school, it's just, sort of taking that deep breath and being one with your inner self and really trying to go to bed each and every night, laying my head on my pillow, knowing that I did the best I possibly could for everyone that I represent.
Do you have a phrase that your parents said or somebody said in your childhood that you still fall back on today? So
I have 2. My grandfather was a proud American. He was a World War II veteran. He lived to 96 years old, only lost him a few years ago. And he always told all his grandchildren, always leave things better than you found them. And that's one thing that's an adage that I take with me every day. And the second is at Chaminade, we had a motto that a Chaminade man does the right thing for the right reasons at the right time, regardless of who's watching. And I think both of those I take to not only the halls of Congress, but my everyday life.
Who or what sparked your interest in public office?
I think it was a sort of a group effort, I guess. My parents were involved locally. My dad served as the deputy mayor of our village for a long time. Always involved in the community. I grew up just houses away from Senator Alphonse D'Amato, so and I came from a community that was pretty active politically. So I think it was just sort of in my blood and in the water.
You talked politics then, growing up.
That's for sure. Yeah, talk politics. We have a small local beach in Island Park, Masson Beach, and it's at the barbecue grills every Sunday. That was politics was definitely one of the conversations.
What were the conversations like?
Well, it spanned everything from locally to to national news. I mean, who would have ever thought in 1980 that a young guy from, again, we sort of followed in the same footsteps, both members of the Hempstead Town Board, but in 1980 nobody thought that a young Italian American from Island Park could be a member of the United States Senate. And I don't think anyone thought in 2022 that a young Italian Puerto Rican American from Island Park would make it to U.S. Congress.
Was he your political hero? Senator?
I think he's one of those people who, we don't agree on everything, that's for sure. But he's one of those guys that never forgot where he came from, and that's something that's so important to me. I mean, as much as I love being here, I look forward to getting on that plane and heading home so I could be in the communities that I represent. And, back in the mid 80s, he was given the name or the nickname Senator Pothole, because he focused on everything, not just stuff here on the Hill, but stuff that was close to home. And I think that that's something that speaks volumes of someone, and that's the same way that I've always been. I always feel that when someone calls your office as an elected official, whatever they're calling about, whether it is a pothole or getting their snow plowed or their garbage picked up, or it's a bigger issue, at that point it's the most important issue to them, so it should be the most important one to you.
Do you have a political mentor?
I think I have many. I look at growing up, my dad was a hard worker, even though it was local politics. He was someone that was in it for the right reasons. I speak regularly with Congressman Peter King, who represented Long Island for a long time, and he was one of those guys who, even if he bucked his own party, he did it because he delivered for Long Island, and I think that's important. Obviously, we've seen some great presidents in the past. I think Ronald Reagan was someone that we could all aspire to be. So I have, and even Democrats. I always refer to Tip O'Neill's book, All Politics Are Local, because that's the truth. If we don't involve everyone locally, we're not going to make it here to Capitol Hill.
What did you do before you came to Congress?
Before I came to Congress, I was a Town of Hempstead councilman since 2016. So the Town of Hempstead is a pretty big place. It's the largest town in the nation. We're bigger than 7 states. We have about a population of 800,000 and a budget of about $500 million. So it was a pretty big operation. And before that, I was a proud member of the New York City Police Department, where I retired as a detective.
Tell us about that experience and how it shapes you, impacts you today as a member of Congress.
Yeah, so I spent my entire career in Brooklyn North, Brownsville, which is probably the most violent square mile in the city, or one of the most violent, and probably one of the top 10 most violent square miles, I would say, in the country. And I always worked in sort of a team-based atmosphere, and I worked and sat in the car with men and women from different color skin, different religions, different economic backgrounds. They grew up very differently than me, certainly different political ideologies, but my life depended on them and their life depended on me. And you really learn to compromise, you learn to talk, you learn to respect other people's beliefs. And the same with dealing with people on the streets. I was always told as a young cop that regardless of how cold it is at night or how hot it is during a summer day, you always ride around with your windows down so you could hear the streets and smell the streets. And that's something that I think I've brought to government and politics. I always have my windows down. I always want to hear from the people that I represent. And I think that that's been indicative of my career. My last election as a Town of Hempstead councilman, I won with 70% of the vote. When I took this seat back, Democrats had held it for 25 years. It was a seat that Joe Biden won by 16.5 points, and we won it by 4. So I think it was the largest flip in the nation. And that wasn't won just because Republicans and conservatives voted for me. It was won because people from all parties trusted me and believed in me.
How are you adjusting to Washington?
It's been an interesting couple of weeks, to say the least. My entire, my family, friends were here for what we thought was going to be a celebratory swearing in, and then I think on late Friday night I was sworn in at 2 a.m. The only person left was my brother. So it definitely wasn't the swearing in that we expected, but we're getting comfortable. I've been assigned my first 2 committees, Homeland Security and Transportation and Infrastructure, which were my top 2 picks. So I'm happy to be a part of that. I'm looking forward to working with colleagues on both sides of the aisle again to deliver for Long Island.